Technology has huge scope to improve our lives, but can also be used for violence and war. In a world shaped by the rapid pace of tech, will soldiers be replaced by killer robots? And how is the UK government, along with others, preparing for war in space? The Joint Public Issues team warns that tech, like AI, will change the nature of war and that Christians should be concerned. I'm Ntim, and I've come to talk to Steve Hucklesby, who works for the Joint Public Issues team, to find out more. Steve, why are the Baptist, Methodist and United Reformed churches working on the ethics on technology in war?
Well, it seems at the moment like the developments in technology are racing ahead and running ahead of a discussion on ethics. So, for example, we have robots already being developed that are capable of deciding who gets killed in a war. I think unless we act now, they have the potential to change the way which we think about war.
I set out on a mission to explore how these advancements will shape the future of warfare. The Joint Public Issues team have gathered some experts for me to talk to. My journey begins at Spurgeon's College, London. Are we prepared for the consequences of these advances? What are autonomous weapons?
Yeah, so autonomous weapons, they're any kind of weapon which basically can use sensors of a machine to detect and then fire on a person or an object automatically after human intervention.
So what would be the impact of these systems on people's lives?
Obviously, there's a huge issue of dehumanization and for human dignity and rights if you reduce people to just data and ones and zeros to be processed for killing, right? Autonomous weapon systems would reproduce the bias and discrimination of our societies that we have already, right? Like sexism, racism and ableism, and would likely have a disproportionate impact on already marginalised communities.
What do you hope governments will do to address these risks?
What we're calling for is a new international law on autonomous weapon systems, a new treaty which prohibits certain systems and regulates others to make sure there's human control in the use of force. The UK government at the moment doesn't support a new international law on autonomous weapon systems. It doesn't support the negotiation of a new treaty because it says that existing frameworks are adequate. We don't agree with that, and we think that the UK government should be taking more of a leadership position in this area.
How are governments rising to the new challenges in warfare?
So there are various forums in place within international organisations like the UN to address rising challenges and to protect us, but they've not been effective in some time. So there's places like the Conference on Disarmament that sits at the United Nations in Geneva, but it's not had anything come out of it in close to 3 decades. So we have been calling for a special session on disarmament to revitalise the debate.
What is a special session on disarmament?
So it's a mechanism of the United Nations General Assembly where heads of state and governments would convene to discuss and advance the disarmament agenda.
Is arms control realistic today? I mean, look at Russia and China. Some people are saying that they'll never agree to it. What do you think?
I think it is a world with very tense geopolitical situations going between various states. But disarmament does remain a viable option, and it needs to remain a viable option. There are different multilateral processes in place, for example within the United Nations, continuing to advocate for this. Civil society is still playing a huge role in pushing forward for various peace and security initiatives. And if we look back to the Cold War, it was a time of very deep ideological divisions. We had reached the point of nuclear annihilation being a threat, and yet even in that environment there were treaties that were enforced, and the disarmament machinery and framework was established during that time. So if it was possible then, why can it not be possible now? There is still hope.
Historically, faith groups have had an important role in shaping international law and the ethics of war. There's also so much in the Bible that talks about justice. I'm curious to explore the overlap between faith and the questions of war and peace. So I've come to see Philip McCormack, principal of Spurgeon's College, who has a unique experience of the battlefield. as Christians, we're called to be peacemakers. So what do you think our response should be?
At the heart of the Christian message is a gospel of peace. We must be living examples of how human beings can live together in peace. And that is a remarkable responsibility, but also a challenge to churches as to how they model peace among themselves.
So you were a chaplain in the military, and then you went on to serve as an academic lead for ethics, advising at both international and national level.
Part of the task that I was given was to articulate the ethical foundation that underpins British Army doctrine. The use of autonomous weapon systems that I'm thinking about are those that might be on station and because of software encoding choose to take human life. And that if prescribed or those designated attack parameters are realized, then that system can operate by itself, which could result in the death of human beings. And then the humans that are responsible for it are then informed. In my view, that can never be right. That can never be ethical, because humans must be involved in the decision-making process if human life is involved. We cannot devolve that responsibility to software algorithms.
The future is not looking good if governments and large corporations spend billions on cyber wars, space weapons, and killer robots. As Christians, I believe that we have a calling to speak out against weapons that dehumanize people. I believe that we have a duty to ensure that our money is being used to tackle poverty and climate change and not for high-tech weapons. I am very happy to learn that people all across the world are calling on all governments for action. I personally will call on my MP to support actions in the United Nations. It's no good saying that we're peacemakers. We need to practice what we preach. Together as Christians, we can have influence. We can build a future where technology serves humanity and not the other way around. So let's make a difference. Please join me.